What is a profession that was once highly respected but is now a complete joke? Story 1, retail. Believe it or not, it was once considered a respectable job. Adults would work full-time for years with the same company, be knowledgeable about what they sold, and make a wage that could support a family. Story 2, mail carrier, in the US at least. We had a good half-century where delivering the mail was highly paid, highly respected, and a great job for people that didn't like the typical office job site routine. In 2024, the pay is subpar and moving towards outright poverty wages. The respect is still high but waning due to out-of-control junk mail and subpar carriers who don't get paid enough to care. The PO took all the new technology of the last 2 decades that could have made the job easier and more efficient and used it to micromanage carriers. Source: Am Mail Guy. Story 3, travel agents. My mom was one in the 80s and made fantastic money helping people plan their dream vacations. Now everyone just goes on Expedia and expects to be their own travel expert. She actually laughed when I told her I was thinking about getting into the industry. Story 4, technical maintenance, industrial maintenance. Used to be respected for your knowledge and contribution to production numbers. Now with corporate greed, you are the red-headed stepchild and costing them money. You don't need all those parts. But woe to you if a machine goes down and you have no part because they reduced your inventory by 3/4. Edit. Word correction. Story 5, nursing. We went from heroes during COVID to expendable workers, working at a 30% loss of staff so they can offer 1.5% yearly raises. It's a total joke. There's no one with experience anymore. About 70% of nurses have been on the job less than 5 years and don't stay anywhere more than 2 years. Not to mention starting rates for new nurses in some areas is as low as $28 an hour for a degree and license. Pathetic. Story 6. The keeper of the royal stool used to be a very well-respected position. Edit. For those not in the know, yes. This is what you imagine it to be. There used to be someone whose job it was to wipe the royal arses, and it was a highly sought-after and well-respected position. Edit 2. Groom of the stool, not keeper. Story 7, wedding photographers. We went from being the preservers of authentic, awesome, joyful moments for the bride and groom to being content creators that manufacture those authentic moments for likes and bridefluencers. I assisted at a wedding this past fall where the bride and groom redid their first kiss 3 different times for the content creators. Seriously, Edit. Honestly, the whole damn wedding industry needs a good kick in the nards. Story 8. Not sure if this was just a ME thing, but I used to think HR had a purpose. I wasn't sure what it was, but now I get that they are not there for you, but as nothing more as a liability shield for the company, and that they should not be trusted by employees under any circumstances. HR is like the police. They can and will lie directly to your face. They do not have your interest in mind, and the entire department is staffed by people who have no skills in anything tangible. Story 9. I feel like nurses have taken a hit in the last few years. Growing up, I always saw nurses as respectable profession, but now I see a lot of people make fun of nurses because they see a lot of them on social media spouting completely anti-science BS, or they have become memes for being a mean girl profession. I mean, I do know a nurse who has told me a donut is a complex carb that is a good breakfast for a diabetic child. Story 10. The counseling profession is currently in limbo. Consumers do not realize the atrocity and horror of companies such as BetterHelp and Ellie Health and Grow Therapy, etc. These are not grounded in mental health at all, and soon AI will be an option. The best therapists are those that can form a connection with a client, using techniques that take years and extra training, much to therapists' dismay as it is $. There is no quick fix, and a robot cannot help you. Story 11. Philosopher. It used to be that logic and reasoning worked in harmony with scientific discovery to apply the knowledge gained in meaningful ways that benefit everyone. Now philosophers are unbearable cumrags who smear pretty words at the wall to appear smart and provide no benefit to humanity whatsoever. Story 12. One that literally had this happen overnight is male models. They were celebrity enough to make bank and be a celebrity, but not in the personal public eye enough to have people have major opinions about them. Then Zoolander was released. The entire profession was rocked to its core because of that movie. It became such a joke that advertisers and agencies were having their own version of the YouTube adpocalypse because Zoolander did such a successful job breaking the golden celebrity facade of the entire profession. Story 13. I feel like business degrees used to be worth a lot more than they are now. People used to have to trade stocks and manually manage all their accounts. But now one person with a suite of programs can do the same job. In my area, business degrees are worth about the same as arts degrees. Neither is particularly valuable or speaks to a candidate's skills unless it is a position in that field. But business was the most popular degree at my university, so it's a very diluted pool of candidates. Story 14. There was a crazy lady in my town that had a chiropractology practice. She was a chiropractor but claimed to be able to cure anything from infertility to constipation. My dad went to her after a car accident to cure his neck pain. It did nothing, but mentioned to her he was having constipation issues. She ended up using this device she called an activator and massaged his lower back with some cream. Well, it worked because he was ting like a broken sprinkler that night. Then his pee turned brown the next morning and he had to go to the ER for kidney damage because he had somehow taken too much of a topical diuretic. I wonder how that happened. Anyway, her clinic has been gone for a decade, but I still don't trust chiropractors. Story 15. One profession that was once highly respected but is now often the subject of jokes is the travel agent. Before the internet and online booking platforms, travel agents were essential for planning trips, booking flights, and securing accommodations. They were seen as knowledgeable experts who could navigate complex travel logistics and provide personalized service. However, with the rise of self-service travel websites like Expedia, Booking.com, and Airbnb, the profession has significantly declined in visibility and status. Today, many people perceive travel agents as outdated, and the idea of using one is sometimes joked about as unnecessary or old-fashioned. That said, travel agents still play a vital role for certain niche markets, like luxury travel or complex itineraries, but their widespread reputation has shifted. Story 16. Travel agent. You used to have to be cosmopolitan, erudite, and it would open you up connections to a larger network of folks around the world. If you were one of few travel agencies in your town, you were often connected to government officials as well as the local barons of industry. Now it's mostly just surfing the internet. Story 17. Grocery clerk. It actually was skilled labor, requiring the employee to manage the inventory to keep the store from running out and to keep everything in date. That requires true skill. With the invention of barcodes and the rise of personal computers in the 1990s, companies started tracking sales and developed algorithms to forecast future needs. Now, you just need a whole bunch of people to stock, and only 1 or 2 people to make sure the numbers that the computer has are accurate. Story 18. Journalism, clickbait headlines like porridge and crumpets to be labeled as junk food. The real story is that it is only foods of that kind with added sugar will be labeled as such. The result is manufactured outrage of people thinking the government wants to stop them eating normal healthy porridge and crumpets. Stuff like this used to be the preserve of the Express and Daily Mail. Now the BBC and other outlets are doing it too. Story 19. Local auto mechanic. It used to be that there were a couple reliable guys in town that you could trust to do the job correctly at a reasonable price. Now people are using the franchise locations or dealers and with trepidation that they're going to be finding extra things to fix or perform unnecessary work. I'm fortunate to have a local guy I can trust, but that's becoming a rarity. Story 20. Hotel I worked at in NYC still has a freight elevator operator. The elevator has long been converted to normal push buttons, but the union requires an operator, so the guy sits there on a stool and pushes the button for you. And if he goes on break, you are not allowed to operate the elevator. Story 21. School bus driver. Because when you're a kid, the universe is arranged like Tier 1, the authorities, mom, dad, God, grandparents, other adult relatives. Tier 2, the adults who I must respect because they have direct authority over me. Teachers, school bus drivers, policemen, doctors, clergymen. Tier 3, everyone else. Then you grow up and find out over time that Tier 2 and 3 include a lot of highly skilled professionals and bus drivers, exaggeration incoming, are basically on work release or one step out of rehab. Story 22. Doctors. In a way, they spend an insane amount of time in school only to come out and make a mediocre salary while being slaves to the pharma industry and health insurance industry, as well as slaves to profit-driven hospitals who make you work brutal hours. If it wasn't for the need and satisfaction of helping people, no one would do the job. Concierge-type medicine is where many doctors are moving to in order to get away from this. Story 23. Local TV news anchor. When I was a kid, they were universally known and watched, and in some cases sort of the unofficial mayors of their towns. Now they have few viewers, and the whole idea of watching a newsreader plod through a newscast you cannot interact with or customize seems really antique. Story 24. In the USA, sadly teaching. It's not a joke as a result of who is doing the teaching, but because of tons of bureaucratic red tape and lack of respect amongst a huge section of the public for teachers as trained professionals. Combine that with incredibly low pay for the education required to teach effectively, and undue emphasis on standardized testing, and it's no wonder good teachers are leaving the profession in droves. Story 25. Photographer. Whether that's a wedding photog, journalism, etc., because someone has a phone, they think they are a photographer. Add in all the filters people use and forget it. Yes, please show me that spectacular sunset you took that proves you are great at taking pictures. Story 26, Supreme Court Justice. Installed for life, these guys are now aware nobody can do a damn thing to them, and we are literally paying for it through our taxes. I've been around for more than 6 decades, and I'm beginning to resent witnessing the history of just the past 8 years. Story 27, Financial Planner, Bank Managers, Branch Managers. Branch managers are literally just glorified sales managers. Financial planners are just asking you to pay them money for something when you could just read a prospectus and invest in a fund and leave your money be and let that organization manager it for you. You're removing a middleman and saving yourself money. Story 28. These days, everyone is looking like a clown serving the oligarchy to me in the USA. Jobs that were good a few decades ago are gutted to poverty wages. Tech workers are engaged with automating themselves and everyone else out of a job with no universal income to backfill the loss. Union workers are engaged in an ideology that will destroy their union and give them the same poverty wages as the teachers, restaurant workers, and postal workers. Journalists are mouthpieces. Scientists are screaming into the void and also getting poverty wages. If you want to be well off, you'll need to join the bastards. Embrace serving in the military, even though it's common knowledge we use the military for highly questionable things. Embrace helping the ultra-rich get away with stealing from employees, or the state, or whoever they're stealing from or raping that week. I'd love to hear what story the high school and college-age kids are telling themselves about how they will avoid all this. When I was in school, everyone thought a college degree would save them. I think it's common knowledge now it won't. Story 29, IDK, if some people don't count this as a profession, but housewives. They really were the heart of a lot of people's homes and were a fundamental part of raising many generations. It used to be a point of pride and not some sort of weird political statement for a person, usually a woman, to spend their time caring for kids. And although there is a stereotype about 1950s husbands, those that were in functional relationships had a lot of support in their marriage and from their community. Now, either you have housewives complaining about not having a village to help them raise their kids, which I don't fault them for personally, and then an onslaught of comments criticizing them and telling them that's what you get for having kids and stuff like that. You have women who feel like single moms having to raise their own husbands. And then you have the weird trad wife thing that's super political and comes off as ingenuine. I think housewives were more respectable when it was just a person minding their own business and maintaining their own family. Story 30, reporters. When I was young, I read newspaper and watched news on TV with Walter Cronkite, Peter Jennings, Barbara Walters, etc. My local newspaper was considered one of the best, with many awards of excellence in investigative reporting. My daily routine was have a cup of hot coffee in the morning and read newspaper. The Sunday edition was especially thick. Now, the company was sold off, and from then on the quality gradually went downhill. Paper shrank in size and became thinner. When I tried to quit, they refused to cancel my subscription. I had to call Paper's action line before they finally canceled. Story 31. Astrologists. In the ancient world, there was this device called an astrolabe that you could use to measure astronomical positions, calculate your latitude, etc. This device was specialist scientific equipment used by ships to navigate, and yet so important was astrology and astrologists that they were often designed to give you astrological information. That's like the ancient equivalent of radar or GPS, or some other ultra-high-tech and practical system being designed to also read you a star sign column from the local newspaper. Can you imagine how respected and important astrologists were back then that navigators and scientists and astronomers wanted to be able to divine astrological data? Now it's considered junk by those kinds of people. Story 32, swordsman. I mean, really, if you see someone walk around with a sword nowadays, they probably have some kind of mental illness or are just cosplaying. Also the baker, butcher, and grocery man. The bakers and butchers inside the supermarket are either teenagers with school or an adult who's underpaid. Story 33, police officer. Used to be respected in the community, and there was the village constable everyone knew who used to patrol the street, smartly dressed and deter criminals. Now police get called over mean tweets, spat at, assaulted daily without hesitation, filmed every time they do their jobs and called rapists, etc. Story 34, college professor. It used to mean you were a respected expert academic in your field, but now, in the US at least, getting tenure is very hard, so few people actually make a living. Also, tenured professors can do pretty much anything they want, without getting fact-checked or held to a standard. I've had my fair share of crackpot professors and had some incredibly lazy professors who make the course not challenging enough for a high school student, let alone college university level. Story 35, teaching. It was never well compensated, but there was respect. appreciation for people doing their best to teach younger generations. Now, I can only see people doing it as a humiliation kink or out of desperation. This is coming from someone who idolized teachers and experienced school as a safe space. I tried it after my master's, and now, even though it's one of the only things I can really apply for, thank you degree in humanities, I don't really want to teach. There's no respect for teachers by students, parents, or society. Story 36 corporate-sponsored journalists have been a complete joke since Reagan's FCC reforms took effect. But it seems like a lot of people are only just now waking up to the editorial atrocities that make our free press consistently less fact-based than the kind of state-run media operations our culture denounces as bad information. Even after the death of Jeffrey Epstein, astonishingly, many millions of Americans continue to think corporate media is a vessel for speaking truth to power, even though it is emphatically an organ for spreading whatever narratives most suit the powers that be. Story 37, pharmacy. In a way, even many physicians, but we are talking about a profession, and I don't think I can make that sweeping generalization about medicine. Big Pharma has such control over how we approach medicine, learn and practice, even research, that it would be comical if it wasn't so sad. There are exceptions, but chain pharmacy is often full of staff who are so busy meeting metrics and ignoring alarms that their academic value, patient advocacy willpower, as well as their souls, are snuffed out too quickly. There are so many amazing pharmacists who live to help patients, and they save lives. But the corporate structure and PBM insurance model make volume more important for many. Even good pharmacy schools are letting almost anyone in now, and I do believe the profession has taken a hit, down from among the most respected professions, for these reasons. Story 38. Most of them, we used to respect experience, but now we just try to squeeze as much value out of any position that we can. People that used to make decisions or recommendations no longer do. Any position that isn't mid to upper management is basically following a script, diverge from the script, and you're liable to get fired. Story 39, accountants. Now the industry is controlled by the big four consulting firms who lobby for accounting standards to be needlessly more complicated, which create more compliance work that they can charge for. The standards for becoming a CACPA are now way lower. All classes in Australia became online learning, just a lazy cost-cutting measure. Certification bodies compete with each other for members, etc. Many certified accountants I work with have little critical thinking skills and are focused on running the same reports every month. The industry is complete garbage, and wages for highly qualified accountants have been hugely eroded over the last 2 decades due to standards being lowered to keep membership numbers up, leading to the creation of a bunch of pencil pushers who add little business or strategic value. Talder, if you actually want a value-adding career with good potential growth, don't be an accountant for the long term. It does teach useful skills, but make a lateral move to something else after you realize it gets pretty boring. Story 40, blacksmith. They were well-respected and linchpins of a community. Need anything from weapons to tools, wagon wheels, hitches, even down to nails and horseshoes? The town's smithy was essential for those needs. Then came the second industrial revolution. Machines and mass production replaced the hammer, forge, and anvil. Some fabricators and machine shops have modernized smithing elements within them, such as power hammers and kilns, but the old ways have been relegated to boutique crafters and hobbyists. Story 41, physician. With the corporatization of medicine, we are widgets, nothing more. The 10 PCPs who left BWH at once, the final straw was when their personal offices were taken away for more exam rooms, more patients, less time. And no, you are not a professional who trained for over 10 years at your own expense. You exist to make the overlords more money. Story 42, dentistry. My wife is a traveling dental assistant, worked at tons of offices. Well, apparently a few Mormon schools hand out DDS like candy. Several dentists of the Mormon faith have told her they don't know how they passed. Fully expected to be failed out, but were given all their certs and DDS at the end. Basically, Mormon schools offer cheap tuition and a free pass to Mormons, knowing that a large portion of that juicy dentist salary goes back to the church. So many dentists out there don't even really know what TF they are doing. Story 43. Teaching used to be well-paid and well-respected. You had good benefits and even a pension. My grandpa was a math teacher and lived in a gorgeous house near a lake. It was a good middle-class job. Wages have completely stagnated compared to the rest of the middle class, so teachers make poverty wages unless they've been teaching for 20 years. It's hard to make it that long because of all the disrespect and lack of resources. Half quit after 3 years. Story 44. I was watching an Instagram reel of this girl working as a stripper. She was making almost $4K a night. Healthcare, I am lucky to make that a month. Maybe I should be a stripper. Then I remembered that I am fat and I can't dance. But the reel did show her weak it was in Florida and crazy. Story 45, teaching. If you know, you know. If you don't, just trust our word. We are trying our best out here in this very difficult world we live in. If you have a good teacher, please let them know. This career isn't for everyone, and chances are if you know a teacher who is happy, excited to be there, and teaching over 5 years, well then, they're a real one. Story 46. Most of them? Systematically, a lot of jobs used to be decent, respectable. But then capitalism stripped away things like decent pay, paid vacations, 401k options, pension funds, job security, and recently, not being replaced by some AI some nepo baby totally believes will revolutionize the field of screwing over the working class and/or creatives, thus undermining them and their entire field. Story 47. Definitely the police. I know lots of police officers here in the UK who are honest, hardworking, and fair, and genuinely just help the community they serve. Giving up their family time to help someone else's family, and some marriages have suffered as a result, breaking down until there's nothing left and they break up. Yet every day these decent officers are attacked, spat on, bitten, stabbed with dirty needles, stabbed with knives, etc. Oh, they can be seriously injured or killed and nobody cares. You even get pricks laughing at it. I wouldn't bra cop for all the money in the world. Not today. The decent cops are overshadowed by people who shouldn't be in the job, unfortunately. They have dockheads filming them, parking their car at the car park purely to try to wind them up and get a reaction from them. Give those good officers who are there for your community the respect they deserve. They've bloody earned it. Story 48. During the pandemic, there was a significant shortage of commercial truck drivers. Initially, only individuals aged 22 and older were eligible to obtain a commercial driver's license. However, due to the high demand for drivers, special interest groups advocated for lowering the age requirement to 18 years old. This change resulted in thousands of young people obtaining commercial licenses, which led to a decrease in wages for professional drivers. Some companies began offering wages as low as $20 per hour. The company I worked for laid off 140 drivers and hired a third party, paying $22 per hour, and this was in California. Story 49. Translator. 100 years ago, it was an almost prestigious profession like lawyer, notary, etc. A translator would work in a study, have a secretary to take care of the paperwork and phone calls, etc. For a couple of decades now, most translations have been handled by agencies that often don't even have in-house translators anymore. They're just middlemen that exist to take a cut and make sure the freelance translators are as disposable and badly paid as possible. To make things worse, translator is not a protected profession like medical doctors and such. Just about anyone can say that they are a translator, even if their work sucks without any qualifications. So clients and agencies are extremely distrustful of people they have never worked with. A relevant master's degree will hardly change that, although I guess it's even worse if you don't have that. Also, everything can be done remotely. So no matter where you are, you're in competition with translators all over the globe who might live in a much cheaper place and can thus undercut your prices significantly. Lastly, for a couple of years now, machine translation has kept becoming better and better, so most people think that they are just as good as a real translator, or at least that the much higher cost of the real translator isn't worth it. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant, as long as potential clients do think so, and they generally can't appreciate the difference in quality because if they could, they wouldn't need a translator in the first place. If you're a young person who is thinking about becoming a translator, think again and think very hard. It's rough out here. Only go for it if you're prepared for that. Story 50. Estate agents in the UK. They used to be a respectable where I am from a long time ago. My grandfather founded one as part of his business in the 1940s, and it survived until my father sold that portion off in the late 1990s. They were both trained in land surveying, house building practices, knew what to look for in defects, and knew legal and financial matters relating to home ownership off by heart, and could warn owners and buyers of potential problems that may occur. The reason my father sold that part off is because he had been competing against a flood of rival estate agents who were springing up everywhere and not operating with any integrity or honesty, and it was warping expectations from buyers and sellers when they came to him. They were undercutting them on fees, using unscrupulous methods to offload properties, making up values that were insane, and making up fake offers on homes, etc. All to cash in on the boom in house prices that marked the start of the UK's never-ending housing crisis. Just to cash in and make a profit. All thanks to Thatcher's block on building new social housing and essentially privatizing house building and renting. Today, almost all estate agents are untrained, incompetent liars who are only interested in your home if they think they can milk both the buyer/seller/tenants for every penny they can at an overinflated cost. Every one of them I have met over the past 10 years is also a secondary school dropout with barely a GCSE in English. Story: 51 years ago, I worked in a bank vault where branches would all bring their cash and checks to be counted. I was 17 at the time, working an afternoon shift, and I hated it because just like the movies, you were locked in a building and every single door you went through, you had to be buzzed in by the security guard. I always wondered what if something happened to the guard. We would be stuck in there with no way out until someone showed up the next day. Story 52: Recruiters. I used to believe that when a recruiter reached out, it was because they had identified something exceptional in your skills and wanted to offer you an opportunity that matched your unique expertise. However, my experience has shown that many recruiters often act as intermediaries who don't thoroughly understand the roles they're filling or the qualifications candidates present on their resumes. This disconnect makes mismatched opportunities and interactions that feel unproductive. While there are certainly skilled and diligent recruiters out there, I think the majority are worse than realtors. Story 53: Urban Planner. Used to be a prestigious appointment responsible for incredible landmarks like the boulevards of Paris, the Barcelona superblocks, NYC's subways, and Central Park, etc. They set the tone of a city and had significant power to shape its overall future through planning. Many were popular, some were hated, but even a lot of the hated ones ultimately are appreciated for their vision. Public reputation shifted in the 60s and 70s as people like Robert Moses and urban renewal, that is bulldozing poor neighborhoods for freeways, became most commonly associated with urban planning. So they just gave up. Instead of trying to fix the issues with their discipline, they abdicated the role entirely. Instead of being experts trusted with the long-term direction of cities and persuading electeds to make good decisions, they now dutifully execute whatever harebrained nonsense comes out of elected representatives and public feedback meetings at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The results are obvious: crumbling infrastructure, massive housing crisis, stagnant or even regressing public amenities like parks and transit, etc. Story 54: Teacher, easily disrespected by small children constantly on a daily basis, being seen as nothing but a glorified babysitter, parents cussing me out for problems that aren't my fault, have nothing to do with me. When I was a kid, respecting your teacher and listening in class was just a given. Kids these days are clowns, and their futures are so dark because of it. Story 55. Not a complete joke, but airline hostess in many countries used to be a highly sought-after and competitive position, especially for young women. Some airlines seem to have upheld this standard, but now it seems to garner less public respect and to be less selective. Story 56. I started my career in commercial art 35 years ago and was highly sought after even on a local level. Now, graphic designers are a dime a dozen, and freelance rates are actually less than when I was starting out in 1989. Don't get me wrong, there are some insanely smart and talented people in the field, but it's heavily diluted by people who know just enough to be dangerous, along with employers who put no value on the job. Story 57. Recording engineer. With the availability of the technology becoming so widespread, anyone can record anything. Back in the olden days, the recording peeps also took care of machine maintenance. Now you can make your own album on your iPad at home with zero previous knowledge, and it sounds all right too. Story 58. Milkman. Everybody had one, and they saw them regularly. They had regular customers and were as reliable as the USPS in that they came to your house in any kind of weather to do their job. Now he is the reason your brother doesn't look like anyone else in the family because he is the guy that banged your mom. The job is literally a punchline for a yo mama joke. Story 59. Astrology was once seen as a respected field that you could go and get a degree in, mostly was used to predict events, but was used for all sorts of things at the time. I'm talking like centuries ago. Now it's been largely discredited and considered a pseudoscience, but that doesn't stop people from thinking they know everything about you because of the month which day you were born. Story 60. Gonna get a lot of flack for this, but working as a public school teacher, I don't think it's a joke. But the amount of disrespect I've seen teachers go through from kids of all ages for very pay makes the gig feel like a joke. Bless the people of Reddit who want to teach. Y'all got the patience of God and you do a thankless job. I hope you guys get better wages. Story 61. Manufacturing jobs. These used to be the most common job that propelled people into the middle class. Now, many of them are filled with perpetual temp-to-hire positions that have no benefits and low pay. A big reason is a lack of unions. Also, a lot of grocery store and retail positions like being a stock clerk or butcher. These used to be respectable middle-class jobs, not just jobs for high schoolers. These jobs paid enough for a single-earner families with 4 kids, houses, cars, a fishing boat. Story 62. Journalism as a profession went from a respected discipline of non-biased, fact-based, and insightful reporting to every journalist being either an activist and/or a political shrill. All respect and credibility went out the window. Fear and hate dominates. The educational institutions that churn these morons out have destroyed the profession. Story 63. Teaching. The collective parent expects teachers not only to be responsible for teaching their children, but also, to a degree, to raise them. Parents today expect the world on a platter for little Johnny, but do nothing at home. I've got one kid who is damn near actually feral. I hate their parents for not putting them on medication when they check every damn box for ADHD. This kid easily has, far and away, by a long shot, the absolute worst ADHD I have ever seen in any individual. In addition to all that, I'm overqualified, overworked, and severely underpaid. Story 64. Academic followed by law school, academic followed by legal analysis on cable vision shows. I look at this professor from the University of Michigan who pops up on social media, and I just think to myself, this woman is an absolute ridiculous joke between selling autographed copies of her book and being on MSNBC. I wonder if she ever has time to really teach anything of value. Story 65. Maybe auto diesel mechanics. I can say pretty confidently that the guy who fixes your check engine light is looking at the fault codes and replacing the most likely culprit. When that doesn't fix it, they will say, oh, we must have received a defective one from the manufacturer, and quietly replace the 25-cent fuse or tighten the loose connection that was the actual problem all along. There's no incentive for them properly diagnosed because they sell more parts this way, once to you, maybe unnecessarily, and then once more to the manufacturer. This one's more risky. I know this because I work in a service office submitting warranty claims. Story 66. For me, IT and doctors, I'm in IT, and it's way easier than they made it out to be LMAO, so I started studying to become a doctor. And I'm also not impressed. I think epigenetics is challenging, though. Oh, also the US president and probably presidents and CEOs worldwide. They just got lucky. Right place, right time plus audacity. Story 67. Teaching. It's harder than ever, less rewarding than ever, and we've never felt so under attack. We're looked down on and everyone thinks they can do our job. Parents think it's our job to raise their kids and society thinks we're not working enough. I'm sick of the disrespect and the lack of improvement in the general situation. I'm sick of being so poor I can't go out with my friends. I'm scared of being stuck in poverty for the rest of my life. I don't want to end up in poverty as an old person just because I felt compelled to help improve people I didn't even know. So I'm out. Expect a ton of teachers to be leaving the profession soon. Story 68. Sorry if this is triggering, but if it makes you feel better, my job is pointless too. I don't know about highly respected, but I was told that a home inspection before buying is absolutely necessary. $800 to have someone check all of the power outlets and turn on appliances, and maybe have an opinion about the condition of the foundation or roof. There is uncertainty in everything inspected because the home inspector does not actually thoroughly inspect or test anything, and the answer is always appears fine, but recommended to service or replace soon. Thanks, this tell me nothing. Then I receive a report that seems comprehensive, but it's all information that anyone with eyes and ears can record. Then, of course, I almost immediately start experiencing problems with the home and wish I kept my $800 for repairs. If you feel like a home inspector actually saved you trouble down the line, then good for you. I'm not done yet. In my family, saying anything negative about therapists is completely off limits. However, I agree with the wise words of comedian Bill Burr. In summary, I told all of the bad stories, and I'm always going to have problems. At this point, continuing to go to therapy is becoming a lifelong car payment. Just get off that couch, life your life, and stop talking to this person. You have 10 years experience in therapy? So what? I watched football for 40 years. That doesn't mean I should be someone coach. Story 69. Audio engineer/producer. Started with people in white lab coats who were expected to be 100% professional and learn the trade from mentors who dedicated their life to the art. They made albums that still sound amazing and better than most of what is made today. Now it's anyone with a laptop and some cheap plugins, watching a few very misinformed and undereducated YouTube influencers calling themselves producer. I don't even bother with the audio engineering forums here because it is so bad. Story 70. Electronic technician. Electronic repair. There were electronic repair places everywhere, and it was a solid trade 30 years ago. But about the time LCD TVs started, also designed for repair stopped, and the design for discard and planned obsolescence era became the norm. All those businesses disappeared within a few years. Very few exist today, and they are picky on what they take on. I did a trade that went extinct, in a mainstream business sense. Story 71 may sound controversial, but a good chunk of tech might fall down this slope as AI becomes more and prevalent. South Park was the first to poke at this concept, in which a lot of jobs that were seen as like plumbing ended up becoming highly sought after, cause AI was replacing everyone's tech-based jobs. My heart goes out to you folks, by the way, but don't be surprised if that episode becomes a reality for you guys. Story 72 journalists. With newspapers dying and there being a rise in public interest being less interested in hard-hitting interviewed stories about the world, and rather there be heavy interest on social media, pop culture, fluff articles, ex-BuzzFeed, influencer drama, meme-type articles. The public interest in Thuringia, hard-hitting journalism has dominated so much. Don't get me wrong. A huge, breaking, unbelievable story that is well-researched and published in the Times will gather attention and viewership. But the art of reporting through the newspaper on less interesting topics is fading, at least in relation to what it once was. Breaks my heart. I would do anything to go back even just 40th years and be in the newsroom. Story 73 marketing. I have almost a decade of experience doing a huge variety in the field, and I didn't truly feel like I got to know it until years in. And nobody cares. Everybody thinks they're a marketer these days. They think there's nothing to it, and they have a personal Facebook, so that means they know marketing. I've seen people tank their business because they don't take the field seriously. It's not hard, but it's like any other career where there are skills you learn to do the job properly. Story 74 lawyers. Once considered a noble profession, it became the butt of lawyer jokes dozens of years ago. There are numbskulls think all lawyers are rich because they are predators. Meanwhile, other than a small percentage of them make high six figures or more. Consider the cost of a legal education, the long hours of study and long hours working to protect their clients' interests. It's a damn shame. What happened? Watergate, the implementation of hourly billing, mega firms burying small firms in paperwork, etc. It's a damn shame. Lawyers get blamed for every one of society's ills, and it's only a small percentage that actually operate unethically. Every single profession and job has its bad apples. But what do people do when they feel they have been wronged? They immediately call a lawyer. Legislatures everywhere adopt laws to limit attorneys' freedom and restrict fees, which hurts everyone. The insurance companies have multiple lobbyists to cry wolf and support their clients to push these so-called reforms. If you are the victim of a bad law or overreaching change, call your state reps. In the meantime, most lawyers, due to ever-changing technology, can frequently not make ends meet. So if you are genuinely wronged, call a lobbyist. Story 75, heart surgeon. Kinda, sorta. So back in the 80s and 90s, if you were the best and the brightest in medical school, you did a 5-year residency in general surgery and then did a 2-3-year fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery. Maybe after that, you would spend a few months learning a particular technique under one of the masters. Then heart stents suddenly became the thing. Then replacing the aortic valve percutaneously through a cut in the skin in the leg became a thing. Then fixing the mitral valve percutaneously became a thing. Then occluding the left atrial appendage became a thing. Now, some cardiothoracic fellowships aren't even filling their positions, and the physicians coming out of those programs are not doing nearly as many cases as they used to. Heart surgery volumes everywhere is plummeting. The surgeons are aging up as well. But that's probably for the best. I'd hate to go to a surgeon who just doesn't have the numbers as some of the older guys have. Story 76. Journalist. Back in the day, journalists would risk their lives going into life-threatening situations and undercover in companies to get the truth out to the public. You could also trust they spent time vetting sources to write their stories. Now, most of them are just puppets that repeat lines told to them by their bosses or just blog writers with a press badge who make up stuff for clicks.